Well, I just thought it quite appropriate that since Rotary has been so instrumental in eliminating a disease that a lot of young people don't even know what polio is, much less what it does to your body. And I thought that what a more captive audience that I would have than to get a bunch of Rotarians together and talk about a disease that has been around for a long time, and that to explain what it does, how it affects you. And just as an FYI, in 1945 I had polio, so I had a little special interest in this project anyway. Polio is a life-threatening disease caused by the polio virus that may affect the brain and spinal cord. The virus spreads from person to person. Generally, if you can believe this, the most common cause was feces, and it was transmitted in things like handrails, and it most often affects unvaccinated children, but you as adults could get. And as we get into the slides, I'll show you a teenager that caught it. So it was very, very easy to transmit. As I said, it's been around a long time. This is an Egyptian stele, an upright stone carving from about 1400 BC. And it shows a priest. Look at this right leg, and you can see the deformity is characteristic of the polio disease. Next slide. The late 19th and early 20th century saw frequent epidemics when polio became the most feared disease in the world. A major outbreak in 1916 in New York City killed over 2,000 people, and the worst recorded U.S. outbreak was in 1952 when there were over 3,000 persons killed by the disease. This is an iron lung. I'm very familiar with those iron lungs. Part of the effect of this disease, it affects the muscles and the nerves that enable you to breathe. And the iron lung was invented to help children and adults breathe who couldn't breathe on their own. So this was used to stimulate breathing in patients who have lost control of their respiratory muscles. The patient's head is exposed outside the cylinder while the body is sealed inside. Do you remember when maybe we were in high school or somewhere, we had a glass bell jar with two little balloons in it, a little rubber thing, and you could pull it down and you could watch that balloon expand? That's the principle that works on this iron lung. And I want you to pay particular attention to this picture in the lower right corner. There's 4 people in a machine that was designed for multiple patients who could not breathe. And look at that little infant respirator on the left there. Thought that we were very interested to show you the iron lung. Next slide. The most severe effect of polio is paralysis, which can occur when the polio virus attacks the nervous system, particularly the motor neurons in the spinal cord. This paralysis can lead to varying degrees of muscle weakness and loss of function, often affecting the legs. It can also affect the respiratory muscles, resulting in difficulty breathing or even respiratory failure. In its most extreme cases, polio can cause death. The paralysis caused by polio can be permanent, significantly impacting mobility and life. There are 35 iron lungs in that picture. Isn't that amazing? And this was taken in 1945 in a New York hospital. And if you could look over to the left, there were the beds. People could come out of these iron lungs for short periods of time. It was used to stimulate your breathing, but if you could not breathe on your own, they put you back into the iron lung. So these were there just to save your life. Next slide. One of the earliest treatments of polio, it was thought that by immobilizing the limbs of the body, that this would be the best cure for, in other words, don't strain the muscles and what have you. And you could see this young girl, they had immobilized her with iron restraints. And then another way was to wrap you in plaster, just like a body cast. And the result of that treatment was often permanent. There is President Roosevelt on the left. Everybody remembers that he did have polio. And of course the little children in the next two pictures. But these children probably wore these braces for the rest of their lives. Next slide. I was very fortunate. Sister Kenny, as she was called, was a self-trained nurse. She got her training in the bush in Australia, and she developed a method of treating polio that was very different from the prescribed immobilization. She created this system of using very, very hot packs, wrapping the limb in these hot packs, and then after the hot packs came off, you got a massage, and then the hot packs would go back on again. Next slide. This one has been particularly very poignant with me. I was 6 years old and I was laying in my bed, and my dad smoked in those days, and I can still see him sitting beside my bed with that lit cigarette in his hand. This is how vivid this was to me. And I said to him, "Dad, my left arm feels heavier than my right arm." And with that, my doctor was Dr. Clyde Croswell, and in those days, doctors did make house calls. Dr. Croswell came out to our house, and before the break of dawn that morning, I was in the isolation hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. The first place you go ahead, is in a room on the second floor of that, on the first floor of that hospital. And I shared the room with a little fellow by the name of Henry. And Henry was about the same stage that I was. It affected his arms, but that was my first roommate. And one of the fun things about it, if you want to call it fun, let's go ahead, was when they rolled in, it looked like big old washing machines with the rollers on it. And it had a fire burning on it, and that water was boiling. And those nurses would reach in with those tongs and pull those boiling hot army blankets. They were just brown army blankets, and they'd wrap it around your limbs. And it was hot. And when I tell you it was hot, as I said, they were screaming throughout that floor of that hospital, because most of the kids in there, most of us were children anyway. And when they wrapped that hot steaming blanket around those children, it was hot, I mean hot. And then they pulled those off. And as I said, I joined the chorus. For the first month, patients were allowed no visitors. My mother, being quite the contrarian, however, would bring her stepladder and sit on it right outside my window. Excuse me a minute. Brings back memories, doesn't it? Well, she would often bring my brother and my sister, and it was always fun to listen to them tell their stories. Next slide. After about a month, I was allowed to be taken outside on a stretcher. And somewhere I have a picture of my friend Ann McNicholas, both of us on the stretcher outside. But this was in November. And so we did get to go outside. And it wasn't too long after that that we were graduated to the second floor of the hospital. Some 4 weeks into the disease, I was moved to the second floor of the hospital, where the children were allowed to be children, even celebrating Ann's birthday. Ann is the little girl back on the far left back there. Henry, my little buddy, got a black eye and the bump on his head while trying to get the urinal out. He was on the side where the little cabinet had an open door, and he could get the urinal out and pitch it over to me. I didn't pitch it back. But this was, you know, we were celebrating, I think it was Ann's birthday. Joyce Lamb, the girl kind of in the middle, was the only teenager among her. I remember she graduated from an iron lung to be part of the party. I always wondered what happened to Ann McNicholas. The little girl between Henry, you can see he's in a different place now, and Ann was a little girl named Joy. She died shortly after this picture. I can still hear her gasping for breath. As Christmas approached and I was pretty well on the mend, this was my last day at the isolation hospital. I was glad to go home. Let's go, Don. I've spent half my life trying to convince people that I don't spell Prichard with a T. But damn, the commercial appeal got it wrong, but my dad was a dentist. And giving $100 in those days, that doesn't sound like much, does it? Well, just remember that was worth at least $10,000. And this was, this fellow Ray Williams was one of my dad's patients. And he owned, take care, Mike. Okay. He owned Ray Williams Blueprint Company, and I knew him even into adulthood. But this was where I was on the mend, and I was curious to notice that I was passing that check to Ray Williams with my left arm. This was the arm that was most affected. To this day, I can lift as much this way, but when it goes to the triceps muscle, it was the muscle that was weakened. And I still have that even today. I'm always, if I'm lifting weights or doing anything that I have to push something over my head, this triceps muscle is a little bit weaker than the triceps muscle in this arm. Next slide. I still wonder what happened to Ann McNicholas. She was a cute little thing. I always wanted to get to know her, especially when we got to teenagers, but I never knew what happened to her. But she did recover from polio. In 1952, an epidemic year for polio, there were 58,000 new cases reported in the United States, and more than 3,000 people died from the disease. On March the 26th of 1953, American medical researcher Dr. Jonas Salk announced a national radio show that he has successfully tested a vaccine against polio. A major, major breakthrough. Next slide. The roots of Rotary go back a long time. This is when Dr. James L. Bormar, then Rotary International president, put the first drops of the polio vaccine in a child's mouth in the Philippines. He ceremoniously launched the Philippine poliomyelitis immunization effort, Rotary's first health, hunger, and humanity. It's called the 3H program. The grant project was underway. Next slide. The project's success led to Rotary making polio eradication a top priority. Rotary launched Polio Plus in 1985. In 1988, Rotary became a founding member of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Through the decades of commitment and work by the Rotary and our partners, more than 2.5 billion children have received the oral polio vaccine. So when Bill Gates joined us in our efforts, he committed to raising $15 million every year, with every $2 matched to that the Rotary raised. He matched it with $2 from the Gates Foundation. This expanded the agreement and will translate to a total of $450 million to support the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Including matching funds from the Gates Foundation, Rotary International has contributed more than $2.6 billion in countless volunteer hours to fight polio since launching its polio eradication program. Polio Plus in 1985. In 1988, Rotary joined in partnership with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention from the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. The Gates Foundation and it's called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, joined the fight. When the initiative was launched, there were 350,000 cases of polio every year. Today, the incidence of polio has plummeted by more than 99.9%. Just to give you a little review, in 1953, March, American Medical Association, Dr. Jonas Salk announced on a national radio show that he successfully tested a vaccine against poliomyelitis. In 1955, the polio vaccine developed by Dr. Salk and colleagues is licensed in the U.S. Before the polio vaccine, the disease had become a major cause of a disability in children. About 16,000 cases of polio occurred each year in the U.S. and in the 20th century compared to none in 23. 1955, the first polio vaccine arrived at the Mayo Clinic one day after its license in the U.S. In 1961, Dr. Albert Sabin developed the second polio vaccine and its licensed in the U.S. A third vaccine was licensed in 1963. These vaccines helped control the spread of polio in industrialized countries. And of course, the one of those that was developed by Sabin was the oral version. So that really made, I think of all these shots that had to be given, but it was Salk that broke the mold so that we could begin to control this disease. In 1994, polio is considered eliminated in North and South America. Next slide. Polio is still occurring. What you see are the areas that are green on there are the polio where it has been most recently been eradicated. But the two countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan, is still a major disease. And it has a lot to do with religion. Okay? Next slide. Let there be, you remember Kay Campbell?
Oh yeah.
Let there be peace on earth. And let it begin with me. Thank you for putting up with me and allowing me to spend this time with you.
Thank you for that.